we've seen recently. So my good friend Steve Bick has agreed once again. He's always very gracious to come to our conference, broadcast live, interview, give us extremely good exposure. So all you affiliates need to be supporting Steve as best you can, because he does nothing more than support horsemen and our mission. So as you all know, at the races, and with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Steve Bick.
Eric, thanks a lot, and thanks to everybody for having us back again this year. You should be happy, actually, that you were delayed a year, because you got to see this. You got to see this great facility that Oakland has crafted. I mentioned this week how much I appreciate that I got to come here well in advance of what has happened here. And I'm amazed at how many people are here for the first time, actually, that hadn't been to Hot Springs before. So if it was your first time, I'm sure you'll be back. This concept and this conversation basically was inspired by my visit in December. I was on my way to Tucson, to the University of Arizona for the symposium, and I thought, well, if I leave a couple days early, I can come to Oakland ahead of their historic December opening. So that's what I did, and Ron came and sat with me and had just a fascinating conversation that Eric was listening to, and then we discussed it later on. And essentially, it all stems from a series of discussions, but inspired by Ron, about what it means to be a steward in the game, a good steward of the game in whatever capacity you're involved in. And that could entail a horseman, a breeder, an owner, a racing official, horse players, anybody that's putting anything into the game is incumbent on them to be a good steward. And from everything I ever learned and everything I ever gleaned about the game's history, the core value was the concept of leaving the game better than you found it. Well, how do you do that? How does that manifest itself in all the different capacities that we have in this game? I mean, there are so many different kinds of ways to be involved in the sport, and everyone has a self-interest to a degree, but the overall concern has to be the good of the game for the collective. And so that's the basis of what we're going to discuss here. And with that introduction, I want to let each of the panelists talk about their involvement in the sport, where they came from, what they do, and from there we'll Q&A and start to bounce some of the topics. Ron Moquett, of course, Rick Hammerle, Danny Caldwell, and Ronnie?
So I'm from the border of Arkansas, Oklahoma. I fell in love with match races and then wanted to move my way all the way up the ladder to run at Blue Ribbon Downs in South Oklahoma. Shout out Blue Ribbon Downs people. And then always just wanted to be a horse trainer. I wanted to be involved with the horse of some capacity. I fell in love with the sport because of the animal. And I've been lucky enough to be having a trainer's license now. This is my 23rd year. And I'm amazed at where we've gone with the sport, both good and some of the not so good. And I think now I'm to the point to where my job is to try to promote the industry for what it can be and what it should be, instead of sit around and think about woe is me and that stuff. So that's where I'm coming from in this discussion, and I'm going to come from the trainer side of it I think there's a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of my fellow trainers in the room, they understand what we go through. It's not an easy game at any level. And so I'll be coming from that side of it for our discussion.
Rick Hammerle. Long-time racing official.
Well, I came up a little differently. You guys, Oklahoma, Connecticut.
Connecticut, New York.
Well, I'm from that place out west, you know, with the big lights and where the sun always shines. Tinseltown, swimming pools, movie stars. And, you know, growing up, we always heard that saying, there's no such thing as bad publicity. And I never really got it. When I got it, I didn't believe it. And for sure, in this game, you learn, you know, maybe it's good for actors and actresses, but we're not in the movie business. And so we need to learn how to curb that. And that's what we're all here for. I think, you know, thanks to Eric laying this on us, the importance of delivering a message. And I'm here to represent, I guess, the fans, because I'm a fan, the horse player, because I'm a horse player, and I'm an official as well. My background as far as getting into the game, the first time I even heard about horse racing, I was a big sports guy, played all kinds of sports, would read the LA Times every morning, and you know, there was a couple guys, Herbert was one of the guys in the back, and I would read the comments, but didn't make anything of it. My dad, who was a school principal, obviously wasn't a big horse player, but they would go, him and his buddies would go about once a month, and they would come up to me and say, hey, give me some numbers for the day. And I'd give him some numbers. And so I just thought, he went to the track and he rode the horses. And whatever happened, they won some money, and, you know, hey, that's great. Until one day in high school, someone said, hey, we're going to go to Hollywood Park. And I said, nah, that's great. And I walked in there, and it was like Disneyland. I had no idea. I'm going to get this straight. I could give some guy some money, give me a ticket, and when I win, I give the guy money, the thing back, and I get more money. I was just fascinated by it, and it didn't go right into it, but eventually we ended up going to the University of Arizona program because I didn't have any other way in, and from then started working at Golden Gate Fields, and since then worked at numerous tracks on the West Coast, Santa Anita and Del Mar, and the East Coast, Monmouth Park in the Meadowlands, and Gulfstream Park in the 90s. And you know what? I said, let's try a different place. And now I'm in the Midwest. And you know, it's just, I feel privileged sitting up here next to Ron and Danny, and new people you meet in this game is tremendous. And like Steve said, I think being in the game like this, we owe it to the game to try and deliver the best message we can and teach these people. So I'm happy to be on this panel. I'm glad Eric asked us, and let's talk about it.
Danny Caldwell joins us as a prominent owner, particularly, again, in Mid-American racing, Remington and Oaklawn, this corridor, is certainly a place where you see that name on the ownership line and in the winner's circle often. Danny, your approach and your entree into the game, 15, 20 years?
Actually, I started when I was still coaching. Back, Ron and I actually grew up 20 miles apart. I'm from west of Poto, Oklahoma, so he's at Moquett. So I too went to Blue Ribbon Downs. My father took me over there as I think I was 20 or 21 years old, and he knew Melvin Burgess, which is Jerry Burgess, who you guys may know in the quarter horse world. He won the All-American Bugs Live in '75, and so Dad said, let's go to the races. I'm going to take you to the races at Blue Ribbon Downs. And so, you know, I was like, Rick, and I walked in and said, wow, I can bet and win place and show and get back some money. Wow, I like picking horses. I grew up on a farm, rode horses, you know, all my life, and enjoyed being around horses. And so that's kind of how I got started in the 90s. And then, you know, as a coach, your salary wasn't very high, so I ended up getting out of the business and got a natural stone business, and it afforded me a way to get back in the horse business. And actually, Ron played my first horse named Smoking Spirit Churchill when I got back in the business. And so I credit several trainers for helping me. And You know, I've been in it really serious since 2007 now, and been fortunate enough to work with a lot of great people. And you know, you got to have, it's like coaching, you got to have great assistants to be successful. I've been very fortunate to do that. But I'm gonna look at it from the owner standpoint. You know, taking care of the horses, that's the number one thing to me, is making sure we take care of the horses while they're on the track and then find them a place off the track whenever they get ready to retire. That's a big thing. And looking at the positive aspects of owning horses. We need new owners in this game. I promote that as much as I can. I get a lot of calls from different people wanting to get into business, and I want them to have a positive experience once they get into business. And that's why I'm here to try to, you know, hopefully reach out to everyone and let them know.
From an individual perspective, Ron, what is your obligation, both internally among those of us that are heavily invested in the game, whose life is really directly tied to it, and what's the obligation externally out to the wider world? Very frequently we hear references to the mainstream media and their approach to reporting on the sport. Talk about what the obligation is of the horseman's community, both internally and then looking outward.
Well, several things. One is where we're at right now. 12 years ago, or whatever it was, I've decided I'm invested in the sport. I put time, and I've got my money, and my blood, sweat, and tears. I'm gonna be a part of the HBPA. I'm gonna be involved as much as I can with our industry. And a lot of the people, my comrades, they are so easy to set to the side and bellyache about what they wish would happen, and be bewildered about all the things that they can't control, but they're not really willing to jump in and get involved. And I was asked to join the HBPA, and I figured that was the way that I could impact the sport. If I'm going to be invested in time, if I'm going to be affected by the decisions made, then I need to push myself. You don't need that nap. You don't need that going to the matinee or whatever normal people do. You need to get involved and help your sport. It's your livelihood. And you need to make sure that people know about our sport. The other thing that I think we should do, Mr. Lucas, by the way, if they could just put him behind us, sometime after, like we got done, it's been a lot better, because a lot of the stuff he said is exactly what we need to do. I mean, we are a bunch of downtrodden. If somebody's winning, we're the first ones. Oh, I'm sure he's cheating, and he's got all the breaks, and I get none, and can't believe that. We got to figure out a way to understand that the people in the grandstand are listening to you, thinking you know. They're convinced that you know more than they do, and they're going to take whatever you said, go to the bar, go to the next spot, and they're going to say, well, so-and-so said this, and so-and-so said that, and the game is fixed, and it's rigged, and all this. So I think that, our job, our responsibility is to represent the industry, show the passion that we have for the animal, the respect we have for the game, and try to promote that. And being positive isn't ignoring the negative, it's overcoming the negative. If there is a negative thing, let's work through it and work on it, but let's don't take our industry down with it. So I think that's my responsibility that I've taken on, is try to get involved, and then whenever I have a chance to impact it positively, do it the best of my ability.
Well, we'll circle back to Ron, because he had an experience this past weekend. You all need to hear, if you didn't hear it on the radio yesterday with us, with Nick Zito and Sandy Montgomery, but we'll come back to that. Rick, as a racing executive that's immersed in essentially the bricks and mortar and putting on the show, talk about your obligation and how you can positively impact the game in your day-to-day role.
Well, I've learned, each day we try to learn something in this game. If you're not, you're being closed-minded. I think, as all of our goals probably are, but it's to educate. We talk about the bad publicity. Don't do bad things and they won't write bad stories. That doesn't always work. I was taught a long time ago in dealing with the press that when you sit down and do an interview, if you're trying to get the message across, when you pick up the paper the next day, God, it's just not quite what you wanted. It's not his fault. It's your fault. You didn't deliver the messages you wanted it to be shown. And I think we get a little lax in that. I think we just figure they'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. We don't need to explain it. I'm lucky because I get to go on Steve's show. I've been doing, 17 years now, every Friday from 10 minutes to an hour, depending on how long he lets me talk. I try and use that time to not only tell a few stories and go over races, but to educate in a small way different segments of the game. And I think we need to do more of that. I think we can't assume that our horse players know what we're doing, and we say we're transparent, but do we really let them in? A quick example. A couple years ago, after I left Santa Anita, I was able to go back to the University of Arizona, where I went to school, and was asked to teach a semester in the racing program, and got to teach a couple of the racing classes, racing offices, things like that. And I said, let's do this. And go in, I have my little lesson plan, and I would tell my stories. And you get to, what I thought was the end, and I looked at my watch, 10 more minutes. Any questions? Not a hand went up. I would get these puzzled looks for like weeks. I remember calling my wife up, going, "Man, what am I doing?" She goes, "Maybe you're thinking maybe you're talking over their heads." He said, "You know what? That's probably it." So I went back in and I started at ground zero. And I remember going home that day, going, "I think I actually taught something today." And from that day on, the dialogue went, the hands went up. We got to talking about things, ask questions. They didn't know what questions to ask, but I was talking over their heads. And I think we need to do that with our players. I think we need to start at the basic level. There's going to be 30% of those people that complain, they don't want to learn. We just need to discard them. But I really think a lot of the people that complain, they complain out of frustration. They don't know. We don't let them know. And I'm talking about from entering horses to getting them involved. Let them join the Zoom draw. Let them listen to what a draw is like. Let them see, number 2, this is how we do it every day. Listen to the jockeys get named on. Small things like that. Let's have forums. So I think it's incumbent upon us to bring the story to them and not assume that they know what we do. So we can talk a little deeper about that. But that's what I think that we've lacked over the last decade or so.
Danny, I'm going to introduce the same question, but I'm going to actually frame it slightly different based on an experience that I had fairly early on when I got involved with the radio show. John Parada had made an advertising deal, I guess, with the Oklahoma Classics, with the Oklahoma Breeders Program, and said, we promised them we're sponsoring the Oklahoma Classic, and you got to go broadcast for the week. So I had not been. I think it surprised John that I not only had been to Oklahoma, but I've been to Oklahoma a lot when I lived in Kansas City and worked for Procter & Gamble, and I used to have to come down to OKC and to Tulsa. So I jumped at the chance and had a fascinating week. And one of the things that I was struck by in conversation with any number of the Oklahoma horsemen was the culture of the horse. And that I mean, you and you reflected that. It's one of the few places. It's a region, I suppose. When I say few, one of the few places where the culture of the horse is quite active and intrinsic in in the lifestyle. Texas too. I suppose Arizona, New Mexico, I mean the whole region. So there's a certain love and a certain passion for equine sport and of all ilk, right? I mean, the rodeo and cutting and everything else. Talk about how much interest there is and the ownership side and bringing people in, bringing them to the track, trying to get them interested in the ownership side, because you're somebody that, the success you're having, you would imagine that you would have a powerful draw, that if people know you're winning these races, they want to know more, I imagine. They want to come see.
Well, the first thing I tell them, the prospect, if they call me, I do have several message me, Facebook, whatever, that's fine. I try to take time to answer each person. But the first thing I say is that you better get used to losing. Because, I mean, if you win at 20%, you're doing good in this business. You can't bat 200 in the pros and stay in the major leagues. So you better get used to it, because it's going to happen to you. And most of the time, like here, I think I'm winning at maybe 18%. So I'm losing over 80% of the time. And I'm an ex-coach, ex-athlete. I hate losing. But guess what? You got to get used to it in this sport. And so that's what I try to relate to the new owners is, this is not an easy game. This is a tough game. As far as Oklahoma and our region, there are several different aspects that the horses are used. So like in the quarter horse, when I was in the quarter horse business, I could sell horses for barrel racers. I mean, I had a lot of barrel racers come by and buy the horses off the track and to go do well with them. Now in Oklahoma, we have great retirement centers that trail, we help support in Oklahoma, and so they give those horses a second career. And so, yes, it is, they do a lot of, that's what I was going to say, about 99% of people care about the horses. They really do. It's that 1% that makes all of us look bad sometimes, and that's what we've got to alleviate. We've got to talk about the positive part of it, and there's so much more positive than there is negative. It just don't get the fine print, unfortunately. But the second thing I tell owners is we want you to have a good experience. Try to get with people and be honest and tell them exactly what, hey, the shooting's going to cost this, the training's going to cost this, veterinarian's going to cost, so they know up front. In fact, I just got a new guy in racing named Seth Kobe. He's actually claimed a horse or two at Houston, and he was in my suite at Remington several times this fall. And he said, hey, he called me coach because I've known him. I coached his mother, and he said, hey, I've saved up $20,000. Is that enough? I said, well, here's what you got to do. Plan on getting about a $10,000 horse, and that way you got enough money to pay your training bill in case something goes wrong right off the bat. You don't have success, but make sure you have enough money so you don't run low right off the bat. That's the worst thing you can do is get somebody in the business, and all of a sudden they expect to get a return on investment within a month, and sometimes it don't happen, unfortunately. So, especially in the claiming game, so I try to give them every advantage I can as far as telling them what to expect once they own a horse. And I don't try to scare them away, because we need owners, and I'm always trying. We had the racing club there at Remington a few years ago before COVID hit, and that was a great way to get people out. We had fans, we had horse players. They could buy into it for, I think, $250, and they got to come out to the track, Remington, put them in a suite, show them, give a program, kind of explain about, the program, and I would come in and visit about the horse and try to tell them exactly, why we entered in the race, why I picked that race, the distance, and then we had barn tours for them. They could come over and they could actually see the horse and pet the horse, and so you didn't have everybody show up, but we had probably 20 or so people actually come to barn tour. So that avenue, I think, is what we need to get down to get new people in the game, is give a life experience for inexpensive. If an ex-coach can own horses, anybody can do it. So that's what I usually tell them.
delve too far into a negative atmosphere, but I do want to talk about messaging and about the way in which each of us in our own capacities are responding to and interacting with people who don't have a positive experience or a positive impression about the game in whatever aspect we're all dealing with. And from that standpoint, Ron, I said we would circle back to an experience you had just this week that is unbelievable, and it is that actually been repeated previously. I've heard this same story in different venues in the last 5 to 8 years, during the period in which the industry has had to deal with external forces that would like to extinguish the entire sport. And whether it's a PETA, whether it's an individual that is on a maniacal campaign to spear the game at every opportunity, there's got to be a way for all of us to try to counteract that. And Ron, talk about going to buy a television at Best Buy the other day.
So when I first got here, we had a TV in one of the houses that was out, so I went up to replace the TV at Best Buy. And the young lady that was there was obviously an implant. She's not from here. And she's very friendly, very knowledgeable, helped me out. I was really pleased with how kind she was during the whole thing. And she actually walked with me up and was checking me out. And she goes, I give her my credit card, and she said, "Racing, what is that?" And I said, "Well, Ron Moquett Racing, that's what I do for a living." She goes, "Horses?" And I said, "Yes, that's the only reason I'm in Hot Springs is the horses." She goes, like what? She goes, I said, "You never been?" She goes, "I wouldn't go to the racetrack." She goes, "I don't know how you can exploit these animals." And I'm thinking to myself, I've done this several times. If somebody says something, I'm inviting them. I want to show you what it's like. Come to the barn. I want you to see it. Right now, the perception is a little tainted. What the information that you're getting is obviously skewed. You need to see what it's like. If we, so I asked her, "Do you want to come to the races sometime? Come to the barn. I want to show you." Because I thought this was an intelligent young lady that deserved to have another side of the story from what she's fed on social media to the side she goes. So I asked her, "Here's the deal. Here's my number. Here's my wife's number. You call one of us. Whenever you want to come to the barn, you call. I'll meet you and give you a tour. Let me know if you think we're exploiting the horses afterwards. If you think that afterwards, then you've been educated and you can have your opinion." So I didn't hear from her. That's November, or late November. Rebel Day, I get a text. I saved her phone number in my phone as Best Buy Shelley, or whatever her name was. I put Best Buy that. And so I got a text. "Can I come to your barn today?" I mean, I have 4 horses in. There's like 90 things I'd rather do than spend any time with someone that already said she doesn't like what I do for a living and the passion that I share. So, yes, come by. Meet her at the stable gate, take her to the barn. She walks through there. At first, she's very standoffish. She looks, and "What's those bandages for? Are they all hurt?" Like, "No, they're not." "Well, why do they all got Band-Aids on?" "Well, those aren't Band-Aids, those are bandages. There's a lot of noises around. We don't want them to cut themselves, and it holds on different braces and medications and poultices and things to keep them, just like if you go get a mask on your face, when the poultice dries off, it feels good. We're doing that to the horses." "Oh, so that's not okay." So we went through all that, and then so they got to stay in the stall, and so we went through everything, and we spent about 1 hour and 15 minutes. Then she comes to the racetrack. We it's a miserable day as far as the weather. It's 32 degrees, but there's like close to 30,000 people in the grandstand. Everybody's having a good time. And there's only 2 people not drinking, and that's me and her. And she is asking every question. What is that truck? And her friend has met her there now, and her friend says, well, that's the murder truck. The murder truck? Oh, what goes in the back is our state veterinarian. I said, no, that's the vet. And then I get to thinking, oh, she thinks it's my vet. So I went around and I said, no, it's a state-paid or state-funded veterinarian. He doesn't work for me. He's here for the protection of the animal. If he sees something, anything that's different than what he saw this morning when he came to give our clean bill of health to make us eligible to run today, then he is instructed to scratch the horse. He's there for protection. So you don't pay him? No, I don't pay him. Oakland don't pay him? No, Oakland don't pay him. He's not our employee. He's the horse. He works for the horse. Okay, so we went through all of this, everything. Now, I started off the day by stopping at the jock's room and got a bat, a stick, and went up there and hit my leg with it, and then I give it to her, and she hit her leg with it. And anyways, it went back and forth until right before the Rebel, I was getting ready to go. And so I told her, thanks for coming, I hope you had fun, and whatever. She never made one bet, never said anything except when I'm getting in my truck, I get a notification, the text said, we need to do a better job explaining the passion and the love you have for these horses. Your industry isn't good at it. The word was we. It wasn't you guys like it was before. You are exploiting the horses. You risk these horses' lives. I went through the manicured track. This guy's whole job, he doesn't work for us. His whole job is to make sure that track is the best service that horse could possibly live on. If you kicked it out, if you kicked that horse out and took it in racing, you turn it in a field, and I promise you, in Arkansas, Oklahoma, Kentucky, you're going to find a hole, you're going to find an uneven surface, but that track is going to be manicured the best of the weather will allow. And so we went through all that, but at the end of the day, her saying the word "we" was what I took out of it. And since then, it's like, you know, she's an artist. She's like, I would love to draw one of your horses. Will you send me a picture? So I think that was my obligation for this weekend. I wish it had been another weekend, but it was for this weekend is when it was presented. And I felt like, as an industry, sometimes we take it for granted that people are going to find the right knowledge. And we take it for granted that someone's going to want to learn the truth. Is that the people back here are here for the love of the horse. They're fed a false perception that we're here for the dollars, or they think that everybody's a king and they don't mind if this horse don't work, we'll get rid of it, we'll get another one. And I think that's our fault, because, you know, we're TMZ. If it bleeds, it reads. They print that. They don't print the good stuff. There's tons of stories like this. So that's the Best Buy Shelley.
Well, that's exactly what we're talking about. That's taken the story to the people. That's what we need to do. I mean, imagine, Ron and Danny on the horse side. I couldn't train a horse, and I don't train a horse, so I don't pretend to train a horse. So I try to do things on the other side to bring the people in. We have a standing offer on Steve's show. Anybody knows, wherever I am, find me, I'll get you in. And I had the offer this year to take him up to the press box to watch a race. And about a couple times a week, I'll get a guy at the counter, Rick here, guys that don't even know. And we take him up to the press box and let him watch a race up there. Little things like that. I mean, just imagine if that was done once a week at every racetrack around the country. Because what you have now, you have Best Buy Shirley out there now. Ron's not telling the story. Guess what? She's out there telling the story. And that should be our goal, is to get enough confidence to teach these people that want to learn, and let them go out and spread the word for us, the good word.
It's a hearts and minds scenario, and that story, when I said that what Ron was going to tell you, has been repeated. There was the situation with the picketing outside of Santa Anita, and Doug O'Neill's guy from Malibu.
Armando.
Yeah.
But he called, Doug called me and said, hey, we got to get this guy on Steve's show and tell the other side of the story.
Well, and one of the stories along these same lines was bringing some people who had been basically recruited to stand out there, picnics that were handed signs, and they brought a handful into O'Neill's barn. And Doug told me, and I don't think Doug has told us on the air, but this was almost like a PTSD scenario where people, they brought up the horses that were easily approachable and easy to handle, and the people were overcome with emotion the first time they'd ever touched a horse. And I brought up the Oklahoma, the culture of the horse as a segue introduction with Danny, because one of the things I've talked about for years, the agrarian society that we all grew up in. I'm 62, and I grew up in Connecticut and rode horses at summer camp, had friends that had horses at riding stables, was out in rural, fairly rural eastern central Connecticut, and I had proximity to a horse. Anybody that grew up behind me has no proximity to a horse. There is not in the Northeast anyway, unless you are involved in equine sport, through family or sibling, there just is not the exposure. And that's the problem we've got. And then you've got these people that think they're talking for the animal, and whose lives are empty, and they think that they're doing a service protecting the animals. They have no idea that with that concept, they're threatening the livelihood and the lifestyle of a viable industry of people that are in proximity and who, in fact, know little else and wouldn't want to know anything else. And to me, that's what, that's the message that anyone immersed in this needs to be prepared to convey. And, the stewardship mantle, in whatever capacity, and we've all pretty much got a similar capacity, but whatever capacity we have, we're obliged to try to change minds and win people over. And it does feel taxing, and it feels overwhelming. We're having to deal with literally a daily onslaught of media, of negative media exposure, and it feels impossible to stem that tide. And with every single derby disqualification, ancillary story, and with every story that's going to go on another year when it comes to service and those indictments, this is just a drumbeat. And every time it comes up, even people who like the game and who are participating are either being affected or souring or expressing frustration. Everybody, we all know, I say this all the time, there's 100 horses entered on a Saturday, there's 10 that are going to win. And that means 90% of the connections involved, the barns involved, etc., and the players too, are going to go home unhappy, ready to kick a cat. And that's a scenario that is not going to change. So there's already a pre-established scenario of frustration. So when there's all the other elements that come at us on a regular basis, it feels overwhelming. And keeping a positive outlook and feeling good about what you do is a challenge. And being proud of being involved in this game and in this industry and in this sport. Who do you look to? Danny, who do you follow and whose leadership among the industry do you count on for that kind of message and encouragement?
Well, the problem is we don't have a commissioner like the NFL, maybe, or, you know, a sports information director at, say, OU. You get some negative publicity that's really not true. We don't have anybody out there to defend it, and that's something I think we need. We need a spokesperson to say, wait a minute, this didn't happen. You know, and like going back to a while ago, 70% of the people really want to learn about this horse, I promise you. You'd be surprised at the questions we got asked. I mean, my wife, when we had the people come out of Remington, I mean, it's like when the shoes, they looked and said, well, those nails hurt their feet when they put the shoes on? You know, like, it's an honest question. They didn't know. But once they learned it, they didn't have no feeling there. It was fine. They were okay with it. So, you know, like you said, 70% of people really want to, you know, you got 30% or whatever the percent is that don't care. They're going to be negative. It don't matter what you do. It don't matter. It's not going to happen. But we do have a lot of people who do want to learn. So we need the positive media. We need someone to speak up for us. And to answer your question, I don't know who to look to. I look to my peers and the trainers that, you know, are positive. But we also have negative and those. I mean, because it goes back to winning and losing. You know, if I get beat by better horses, I get beat with better horses. I mean, I watched my grandson play basketball the other night. We got beat by a better team to go to state playoffs. You know, it wasn't nothing that the coach, which was my son, could do. Just we got beat. And so they had a better team that day. That happens in horse racing. I mean, it goes back to his point about how you enter. I mean, I study condition both in and inside and out. That's what I do. And I try to put the horses in a place where they can compete. And it's not always easy, especially here at Oklahoma Park. You'll think that you're in a great spot, and you'll look up and you'll be 10-1 here. And you'll think you should be 5-2. And it's because of competition. And so, to go back to answer your question, though, we do need, in my opinion, a spokesperson that can say, hey, wait a minute now, you know, I read your script, you printed it, you may email it out to everyone, or you put it on social media. This is not true, and this is not true. And right now, we don't have that. They can print it, and 70% of the people, well, or more, is going to believe what they print, because there's nobody to rebut it.
Repeat the question.
Well,
I was thinking about some other things.
Well, from an industry participant and from a racing office and from a racing executive standpoint, and you know, you had, I'm going to guess, other than you, I said this the other day, you and George and Hale are the longest tenured, you know, certainly involved with Magna Entertainment and the Stronach Group, the longest tenured racing office executives in the country, in places that saw a parade of management. So who do you and who with your racing office, because they look to you. I mean, when you're vice president of racing or director of racing, depending on the title and the responsibilities at various racetracks, how do you rally your team, and who do you know, they're looking to you. Who are you looking to for that leadership?
Well, like trainers do and owners do, we have a little group of that you deal with. I try and, you know, it's crazy to sound like a role model to the people that were underneath me, and you know, first one there, last one to leave. You do all the things that you have to. We would talk amongst us. You know, our racing secretaries around the country, we're buddies. We have the same problems. We talk about things, not just about what's in what we're doing at our own individual tracks, but discussing how do we get how do we get this across? How do we teach people? How do we do things like that? So, you know, I look to, like you said, my peers that have the same problems that I do, and put in as much time as I do. Let's go back and you know, being a trainer, being an owner, being what I do. I mean, we put in. There's a lot of time involved, and physically you're at a racetrack or somewhere, and then mentally your head's still going. You're lucky to get a few hours in here and there, but you have to have a little bit of passion to be able to do this kind of stuff and enjoy it, and that's why we're here. And I envision, what if every racetrack did this once a month in the city, you people that are horsemen out here, and we have fans out here, and media, that we could sit here and just, we say that we're transparent, but are we really transparent? Let's open the door. Transparency is something that, it's easy to say, but it's hard to do. And those first couple rounds of transparency where you kind of maybe say stuff that you don't want to say, but let's open the door. But in the long run, this is what we need to let the people out. Let them know like some of the mundane things we do day in, day out. Let's face it, it's a great life, but it's a lot of repetitive stuff. We're doing condition books, we're taking entries. I mean, but to them, it's not. It's a new world, and training. I'm not saying training is mundane, but you got to get up every day. You got to go to the barn. You got to feed the horses. You got to take them out. They got to get exercise. You got to deal with the jockeys. And I mean that's kind of pretty cool when you sit back and look at it from the outside. And so I think it's incumbent upon us to let the fans, and the fans, man. There's fans and there's horse players. I think we ought to turn fans into horse players. But let's give the horse players some confidence about. Yeah, you know what? I like horse racing, and I'm proud of it. I'm learning about what this game's really about. Yeah, I like to cash a bet every now and again, but it's pretty cool.
And I want to tie this all together somewhat when it comes to the transparency issue, and I'll throw out the long-running axiom that sunlight. Sunlight is the best antiseptic, and having everything about the game exposed for people to see, and I'll give you an example, and depending on how long people have been conscious of the sales side. I remember when Jess Jackson was so upset with what he essentially felt was consigners, conspiring at the sales, and his sales integrity initiatives. And I didn't know enough at that time to understand what he was trying to accomplish, but it was at the time, I don't know if you remember this, right, Ronnie, 15 years ago, give or take? And it was a scandalous topic for a period of time. But it absolutely, if it opened a wound, the wound healed, and healed well. And I don't think we have dealt with those issues nearly to the extent that we did at that time. And then maybe I'm being a little naive about that, but I don't think so. The Sales Integrity Task Force that OBS and Keeneland and Fasig and Barrett's all participated in. And anytime there has been that kind of exposure, and a lot of things that Pat Cummings is trying to accomplish through the Thoroughbred Idea Foundation, it has to do with this topic of being transparent, and that if once you open those doors and open those floodgates after the initial embarrassment, if that's what it is, we actually will be better off. And so it's a question of, in each individual area, making that commitment to do the right thing and start fresh from that point. And that's a tough thing to admit. It's a tough thing, for any industry, I imagine.
The thing that we're dealing with, though, right now, seriously, is perception. And we're dealing with an industry that is the most regulated sport, probably one of the most regulated industries in the world. I promise you, we're tested to the picogram of everything. Yet, I don't know how many tests they said they did a week, was it 10,000 tests a week, and you know, most all the time that they're clean, and yet they talk about the bad. They talk about the very minute view that are bad. The fact of the matter is, Bob Baffert's bad test that's on the border of putting him out of the industry with that horse Medina Spirit was the horse that run with the fewest drugs in his system than any of his horses that won the Kentucky Derby. It's not good enough. Took away Lasix, took away NSAIDs, Banamine, Bute, took away anabolic steroids, took away all this stuff, all the adjuncts, everything, and a picogram. You know, if you go back 10 years and think, well, what was legal, and the perception was better then than it is now, when they're not allowed to have anything. So at some point we have to understand that we're trying to please people that we're never going to please, and they're the ones pushing the agenda that we're dirty. So start doing right, keep doing right, and understand that you're trying to, one thing, we're worshiping a false prophet. We think that win percentage is the telltale who gets horses. I think horsemanship should be. I think we should focus more on that. Every time you turn on TV, they talk about this guy's at 30%, this guy's at 35%. That new owner comes in the game, he looks up and goes, well, that's who I want right there. I don't know anything, but I know numbers, and 35 is better than 15. So that's the guy that's going to get the opportunity. So what does that tell every young trainer to come in? I got to do whatever it takes to be at that high percentage, because that's who gets the opportunities in our sport. Then we also get to deal with the fact that there's people and organizations that would profit should we not do the right thing. If we don't understand that we need to first take care of the horse, to put the priority on the smart stuff, don't worship the false prophets, then we're lost. We're lost. We're floating around and we're trying to please a master that's never gonna accept us. It's, look into yourself. If you're doing the right thing and you're clean, I don't know. There's a lot of horse trainers in here that I respect and owners. I see a couple of vets. Does anyone think that somebody is gonna legitimately try to cheat in the biggest races? And then if they get caught with the picogram of this, they're getting run out of business by a test. The same test that today can't tell what Service and Navarro were using. So how valid is this test? At some point, there's got to be some common sense. We got plenty of regulations. Let's put some common sense somewhere. And I think when we do that, we're on the road to recovery.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think common sense is went out in a lot of things. Politics, horse racing, whatever it is, there's no common sense anymore. And we're so regulated now that a picogram, I mean, you go to a pond and say pour a little deal of alcohol and you can get a picogram out of it. I mean, we gotta have tests, we gotta have everybody doing it. We all want a level playing field. I know Ron does, I do. We all want a level playing field, but we're trying to appease people that are not knowledgeable in the game.
And are never going to be appeased.
And never be appeased. And I don't know why that those people get to make the rules, but sometimes that's the way it works out. But I value what Ron said, and it's got to get better. It can't get worse. We don't need any more regulations. It's got to get better, and I don't know what the answer is.
Well, great example, but I want to go back to an example that I have. We're not, if the general population is not understanding the difference between a therapeutic drug and a performance-enhancing drug, that's our fault for not informing the public better. I don't know about these drugs. You know, in my position, you know, I just, sometimes I don't want to know, just if they're good, let's go. I mean, the person. Hey, the longer the name, the worse the drug. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, there's a lot of e's and n's and c's in there. That must be bad. But I'm seriously, we're not lucky enough to have, you know, Jenny and Tom and Frank there. They're going to ask the question. Okay, tell me about that drug. We have A and B are bad, and C's not so bad, and D's really not that bad. But maybe there's a better way to inform when there is a positive, or what's the difference between a positive and an overage, that the public or the general horse player population said, oh, he took an extra aspirin in the morning and got it. He wrote a ticket in over there. This guy was caught with some bad stuff, and different way to differentiate the two. And like Ron said, we're at the point now where we're picogramming to death. And you know, who knows what it is.
So the test, the way we judge who's cheating is based on us not being able to pick it up into the picogram level, I believe. The way we're trying to figure out the difference between contamination and attempting to cheat, that's a huge issue. And the antiquated way we're doing it with this high-tech equipment we have, there's got to be a round table. There's a lot of people that's a lot smarter than a sleepy horse trainer to come up and go, look, this did not affect this horse. Throw it out. Or this, it did affect this horse. Let's look into it. Or, you know, there's all kinds of situations that come up all the time that I'm going, did someone ever think to use any common sense?
Ron, you're guilty until proven innocent. That's the way this is.
And as soon as you get the little write-up, then somebody's going to grab it, and the next thing you know, there's websites out there calling you cheater. And you know, here's the thing. I told a story once about Delaware Park. We were trying to save money. We bring in hay from the West Coast, Washington State. Beautiful hay. It comes in, but it's going to be there at 4 o'clock in the morning. Well, surprise, they show up at 9 o'clock at night. So I'm out in Delaware Park, unload 3-wire alfalfa and Timothy off of the back of the 18-wheeler with all my help. The truck driver gets up there and undoing his strings. He stands at the top of the deal while he gets the we're unloading the back, and he's urinating down on the side of the, he just got through getting his straps off. And he urinates down on the side of the hay. So it's touching the hay. And I was like, well, don't unload that shit. Take that back with you. You had coffee, you probably had no-dos or whatever truck drivers use. But then it got me thinking, that hay that is going to be ingested by my horse, where I am the absolute insurer, has been handled by 4 to 7 people before I ever put it in their hay bag. I'm responsible. And if it comes in, whether it's gypsum weed, whether it's caffeine, whatever, then all of a sudden I'm a cheater. Before it ever got to my barn, it could have been at the levels that we're testing today. Before it ever got to my barn, it could be contaminated. And the way we judge, you're automatically a bad guy. There has to be an update to the system.
Going to wind down and kind of just summarize to some degree about, and again, I think every part of this topic can be governed and managed just by personal responsibility and the phraseology of being a good steward and whatever role we all have. Taking careful control over what we can influence, and if everyone would basically do that industry-wide, it would, to my way of thinking, it would alleviate, it can't overcome everything, but if your sphere of influence in whatever area of the game you're involved, if you're being a good steward, it rubs off and it helps permeate the environment that basically can be improved. And I don't know how else we're going to, with absent of a change in the controls of the sport that do not seem to be at hand, even if HISA is implemented. To me, it feels like everyone has to tend their own garden, and that alone will go a long way toward improving everything for everybody. And I'm certainly don't mind being, thought of as a Pollyanna on that front, or wearing rose-colored glasses. But it doesn't feel like we've got other options under our control. We can only take care of what we come in contact with, the way Ron came in contact with someone who had a notion of the game that was incorrect, and he corrected it. She'll go out and counter friends of hers who believe that, and erroneously, exactly. So it's a trickle-down effect, and it's to me, it's a hand-to-hand combat scenario.
Outside of it, every year, the first Saturday of May is an example. Every year, there's millions upon hundreds of millions of people watch the Kentucky Derby. Most of the time, they don't care about an exacta. They don't give a crap about a win percentage. And for the majority of the time, they won't remember the trainer's name. They love the horses. They like the opportunity to see them run. And if we focus a little bit more on that and less time on trying to teach them trigonometry about win percentages of pick fives and first off ROI, blinkers, blah, blah, blah. Tell them about the horse. It's proven that's the method that works. If you don't believe me, look at your average day of handicapping TV, where you got a bunch of guys over there worshiping to the altar of the win percentage and the almighty guy that wins every drop he runs, versus the Kentucky Derby, where people don't have a clue about an exotic wager. They just want to watch a beautiful horse do what it was bred to do safely. There's still time, there's still opportunity. If we focus on the right thing, do the right thing, we can do this.
Well, I think a couple things here about the message and about our problems in racing. I think we're stuck with an inherent problem in this game as far as trying to get things done. And it just triggered it again the other day when I read the headline that NFL is needing to change the rules about overtime, right? So guess what? They have an off season, they go meet. We don't have an off season. So we're meeting here, you guys have your little group here, it's great. And then guess what? Tomorrow you're going to go back to your jurisdictions, and then maybe the owners group will meet in a month or two, and we'll meet in Arizona, and we'll go back to our ways. There's a pipe dream, and I mentioned this in Arizona. We need to set aside a period of time. I'm not going to say we're not going to race because, we can't do that. But we, as an industry, need to set aside a 2 or 3 week period where we're going to lock ourselves in rooms, and we're going to figure out how we're going to get this stuff done and not sit up here and talk about, this is a good way things to do. I know for myself, and I'm going to speak to these guys here, you call on us, I don't care where you work, you want me to come and talk to your fans, I'll do it in a second. I think Ron and Danny would do the same thing. But we're going to leave here, we're going to all go our separate ways. I think this is my wish, my dream, that we can dedicate to a 2 or 3 week time, literally, where we have some topics, and we need to worry. Look at John down there laughing at me. But we need to set aside time where we have league meetings, and we have half a dozen of the trainers group, half a dozen of the owners group, racetracks, get together, go in a room, and walk out that door and say, here's what we've done, here's our message, and here we are. But we can't do that because we never stop. We just keep going, and then another problem comes along, and the old one goes away, and another one. But I think that we need, the talk is easy to sit up here and talk about, this is what we'd like to do, and we're more probably proactive than a lot of people in our positions. But we need to sit down and, like I said, lock ourselves in a room and fix A, B, and C, and don't leave until we get it, and give that message out to the public. So that's my spiel there. Like I said, when I saw that, what is football doing? Well, guess what? Overtime sucks the way they do it. And then finally realized, we got to change it. Guess what's going to happen? Next year, it's going to be changed. We don't change things overnight or sit down and do it. We got to ask everybody. We're tired of asking. We need to start doing it.
I totally agree. You get everybody together, owners, trainers, racetrack officials, whoever it may be, to sit down in a room for 2 weeks and figure this out. That would be great. I hope it happens. Until then, as all of us sit in this room, all we can do is go out and try to teach people the good of the sport, how we take care of the horses, why we do this for a living, and do our part. That's about all we can do right now. But I hope what he's talking about really happens. But we got to have somebody get the ball, take it to the basket.
Danny Caldwell, Rick Hammerle, Ron Moquett, everyone, thanks so much.